Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's Public Works meeting. We'll wait for some other council members. Hopefully, we'll be able to start it as an official meeting. It's not, if we don't have a quorum, we'll start it as an unofficial meeting and then get into our items we have to vote on. Good morning to you, Ms. Lewis. How you doing?
It's the contracts, Fusion Mobile, and this is the study that'll come later.
Councilman King coming? Councilmember King coming?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay,
sir.
all
Good
right.
morning.
Hey,
Good morning.
good morning.
Hello. How you doing? Pretty good. Pretty good. Pretty good.
Ms. Kern, we're going to start the meeting as a roll call. We don't have a quorum here, but we're going to, out of respect for people's time, we're going to start it as an informational meeting.
Sure.
We'll take item 4 and 5 first before we get to the items I think that we have to, I know we have to enact Rule 57 and then vote to send some items to the city council, to the full council, but let's at least start the meeting out of respect for folks' time.
Sure. Roll call. Councilmember Thomas.
Present.
Councilmember Jeruso. Councilmember Harris. Councilmember King. Councilmember Green.
Present.
We do not have quorum.
Let's go to item number 4, please. And I can read it while you're doing that. Yeah, the teamwork, man. That makes the dream work. Presentation from the Sewage and Water Board on the canal drainage backflow prevention and lead updates. If you guys could start your presentation.
Good morning.
Good morning. Please acknowledge who you are when you get to the table,
Pull up first.
and then when you're ready, let's get it rolling.
We've got 3 different things. No drainage. I don't have a drainage.
Doing all right today, man?
Doing fine. Things are going well. Boy,
Good morning, Councilman.
Good morning.
Good morning, ready?
My name's Renee Laparolari. I'm the Chief of Staff of the Sewage and Water Board. And we are going to start with a presentation on our canal cleaning schedule and updates. And I'll just have everybody introduce themselves. So we'll start with the canal cleaning and then we'll do the lead program.
Absolutely.
I'm Dave Capel. I'm an engineer with Sewage and Water Board and the Director of Support Services.
David who?
David Capel?
Capella?
Yeah.
Okay.
Capel. Without the
Capel.
A. Yeah.
See, like Jeff Capel, a basketball player from Duke?
Close enough. Yeah.
Okay, all right, all right.
And I'm the Director of Support Services.
All right, all right.
Hi, I'm Felicia Bergeron. I'm the program manager for the Sewage and Water Board's lead line replacement program.
Okay.
I'm Nine Hendrickson. I'm an infrastructure project manager for the Sweat Mill backflow section.
Okay.
And I'm Alice Noel. I'm in our communications department.
All right, all right. Let's get started.
Okay. I think we go to our first slide. Let me see if you see. So this is just a basic overview of our drainage, the operations and maintenance, how we're divided into 3 parts. First, we have, pumping and power. That includes the drainage pump stations. That's not in my purview. It's support services, but the next one, canals and large diameter pipes, that's within my department. And mainly what we do is the grass cutting and debris removal of the canals and hyacinth control. The dredging is part of my group also. It's an unfunded group, but we actually have provided means to do some dredging, and I think you've seen that around. We'll talk about that a little more in a second. Then the small diameter pipes, that's the under 36-inch pipes. That is what we'll be taking over in January, and that will be coming to my department also. So this shows out of my canal maintenance division. This is the in-house grass cutting that we perform. And what I highlighted here in yellow was the Morrison Avenue Canal, and that's close to 94 acres of cutting. And it keeps my crews pretty busy. What I'm doing is I'm adding that to the contract that's out on the street right now to take it out of my crew's hands and put it into the contractor to allow my crews to do more dredging. And we'll follow up on that where I plan to go and what we've done. As far as dredging goes, this is something, actually, we completed, if you look at the first slide, the before and after, that's Dwyer between Samabar and Francisco. We completed this, this section about a week ago, actually. So this, I think this shows the great need for the dredging operations that we have. And then we have the Magellan Canal at Pace. I think that shows, you know, you have one that's an earthen canal, and then you have the other one that's a concrete canal. And it shows just kind of the, what's been built up for so many years in the canals.
The before and after.
Before and after, yes, sir. We actually, so this actually started, our dredging started several years ago when I took over the department. I had been doing a lot of canal inspections, you know, the underground canals, and so I saw a great need for it. And so when they gave me this department, I kind of ran with the dredging too, because I know it had great concerns here, and I have a fantastic manager of that department that has really ramped up his personnel. When I started, they had like 4 employees in the canal maintenance division, which includes grass cutting, and he ramped it up in a short amount of time, probably 3 months, to 25 people. And our hopes is that this coming year we get another 5 and we can keep it about 30 people to help with these efforts. Here's also, this is recent. Washington Palmetto is an ongoing canal dredging that we're performing. And I think if anybody's driven along, you know, Palmetto, the Washington Avenue corridor, you can see the canal has a lot of buildup in it. But this is kind of what it can look like on the left-hand side. That's when we're finished. And I got to tell you, it was a mountain of debris that we had stored, you know, just from this one section.
And now, Mr. Capel, for the public who's listening, this is important. And I know we've been asking for this for quite some time. Mm-hmm. If the water can't go into the canal, it's more likely to go into our streets and our homes.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And it's important to say that this, you know, this division is unfunded. So I'm moving, like I said, with the Morrison Canal going to the contractor for cutting, I'm moving forces around to help this effort because it's so needed.
And when you say unfunding, it doesn't.
This was a
it really doesn't seem to make sense, right? Because
the dredging,
the canal is there for a reason.
Yeah.
And so keeping the canal cleared and open, you know, it supports that reason.
Absolutely.
Right. So,
absolutely. So the dredging division had always been in support services.
Okay.
But it was funded up to, you know, we lost the millage in 1993. So it just sat there being unfunded. But
yeah, that would be major irony. We have a canal, but no water can go through it.
Yeah, that would be rough. So we're trying to avoid that.
Gotcha. Okay.
We're working on it. If you want to go back to that slide, go back to the 6th. And this also shows the Morrison Canal. This was, and I think you see the equipment that we use. We have the equipment to perform this job efficiently. This was up by the UPS, I believe, distributor up on the head of Morrison.
Yes,
it was completely blocked.
Yep.
And so we got out there and we cleared it up real nice. And it was we took all sorts of timbers out of there, of course, shopping carts and that kind of stuff. So it was great. I think we finished it in a month. So we got that done. It was a quick job. So we do this a lot of times when our grass cutting crews come off their regular rotation, and they'll go in the evenings and also perform some of this work. Okay, go back to 5. So let's talk about the hyacinth control. I know we had an issue. It looked really bad about a year and a half ago, and so we saw that. At the beginning of before this summer, we had just a small contract, a $30,000 contract to spray, which helped tremendously, helped loosen it up. And then we got in with equipment and we removed a whole lot of it along the I-610 corridor and then some other areas. What's good is if you loosen it up, it'll eventually find its way to the drainage pump stations, and we can remove it there. So for this coming year, I'm going to actually add a spray contract that hits it twice a year, but we really do prefer removing the hyacinths so that if we kill them, they don't drop down to the bottom and then become a dredging issue, right? So we like removal of them. So we're working to remove that and get the canals cleared, and I think we're making a really good effort on that. It shows. I think this is a recap of just I think everything y'all have seen before. It's just our basic drainage revenue that comes in. It's about $70 million. Most of it goes towards our maintenance and operations. then the rest goes to capital improvements, and most of that is taken up by SELA commitments and just leaving a little bit for other capital projects.
And SELA is our match to the SELA program, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So, and I think so. Our drainage funding needs, of course, is a fair amount, and I think that's something that's really not so much in my department to talk about. But there's a couple projects up there that I'd like to mention, since the underground canals are within my department. If you look up on the left, these are photos that I took actually when I was doing some inspections. The Orleans Avenue Canal is in dire need of a cleaning. That's where the St. Louis Canal is an open canal and changes to a closed canal right there at the American Can Company. And it continues, there's a lot of debris that continues right past the canal, the American Can Company, which it needs cleaning. There's a lot of material in there. That would be a great project to undertake, and we'd like to do it in-house. It's a lot cheaper for us to do it in-house than contract it out. And then the important one down there at the left, you see the Galvez Street Canal, South Galvez. That's right between Perdido and Gravier. You can see the buildup. It's like it looks like a nice sandy beach, right? And I suspect that was a lot of that was from the building of the University Hospital during that time. What's interesting about this, and what's important to note, is that that's a V-shaped bottom to that canal, but you don't see the V-shape.
Right.
That V-shape is very important to keeping the canal clean because it'll be turbulent, and it'll lift up those particles and push it down to the next drain, to the higher drains. Well, it can't do that right now. So that actually, if you do the hydraulics on this, that 15 to 20% blockage of that V shape actually affects your hydraulics by 50 to 60% as far as flow goes. So you're really reducing your flow characteristics a great amount. It's not a one-for-one relationship. So
Well, if you don't have any flow, then the water has nowhere to go.
Correct.
I wasn't trying to rhyme, it just makes sense.
Correct. Good way to put it. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So I guess our improvements for the canal maintenance, we want to get more back into, and we do this over the winter months when my grass cutting crews. That's why it's really good to have the in-house crews, going at 25 employees to 30 employees, because during the winter months we can cut trees, we can do more dredging, we can remove the hyacinths. We have more time to do that work, and that's the months that we're coming into right now. So that's it for my presentation. Is there real quick. So it is my department that is slated to take over the minor drainage system, and we're set to do that in January 2025. I think, they're finalizing the cooperative endeavor agreement and the funding requirements.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly how much money I'm getting yet, but I'm waiting to find that out. But I want to say that the Department of Public Works, the city, has been very, very helpful in this transition. They've been just fantastic to make this smooth, and we look forward to taking this over.
And for the public, it was the Consolidation Committee, Councilmember Green, that Councilmember Giarrusso and I were on. We were negotiating with Sewage and Water Board and the CAO's office about consolidation of the drain lines under 36 inches, which were under the purview of the Public Works Department, and the lines that they had to drain into, 36 and over, was Sewage and Water Board.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So the consolidation seemed to make sense. The only thing that we were working out was governance and funding, and so I think it was estimated maybe 20 plus some more maybe, but that piece has been worked out, right?
I think
We hope so.
we hope so.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, but in terms of consolidation, that's been done, or will be done.
Will be done.
Will be done. Okay.
Starting the 1st of January.
Councilmember Green.
I appreciate the work that has been done. What has changed now that you're able to do this work? For example, looking at the Dwyer Canal, which we all looked at for a while, what has changed? And what can you do to assure the public that it's not going to go back?
So it was kind of funny how this came about. So I took over the department, a little over 3 years ago. At that time, most of the grass cutting was done under contract by the contractor. We did very little in-house cutting, but they cut my budget so much for the contractor that I couldn't contract as much grass out as was required. So we had to build that department really quick because I already had grass cutting equipment. But somehow in the past, the department had really depleted a great amount. I did have a young manager that was just coming up to speed, that was very, very aggressive. And so when this happened, it kind of forced us to build that department up really quick. And he's done a fantastic job. Anytime you call, the call goes to him.
Right.
And he's just a fantastic manager. So he built up that department very quick, and with him doing that, and he's a very hands-on manager. He's a very good equipment operator. He's actually on the equipment a lot of times, doing the dredging himself. And I have several other really good equipment operators. So at that point, that's what made the change for us to be able to do this dredging. And so that's kind of when we instituted it, and we see the good that's come out of it. The best way going at the same rate, I can keep the same rate as long as I keep the same contracts to the contractor cutting grass. If I had additional funding, I could do more work. That's just the bottom line.
But you did say that it was handled on a private sector level, and how did you build a department in these challenging times when we can't get personnel, and you said that we had a shortage of money to be able to contract out?
I'm gonna give all that credit to my manager of the Canal Maintenance Department. He's just fantastic. His boss that was there was not as good as him, should I say that? And he's done a fantastic job. Young guy, very motivated. He pushes. He's a great trainer. He's a great leader, and he helps to keep people on staff. He's just a fantastic person. I would nominate him for my Employee of the Year. He's really, really great, and I really owe this to him.
All right, Council, we got to recognize this person. But so you're saying that the difference between the Dwyer Canal getting cut between Samovar and Francisco Verret was the management?
Well, the dredging part, yeah, not so much cut. I think you said cut.
Well,
the dredging is,
the dredging.
Yeah, on my management, yes. Yeah, on my management.
What can we do to make sure that it continues to be that way? Because certainly, Councilman Thomas, I don't have that many, but I do have a couple of them, as you know. For example, I appreciate the work that was done on Morrison, but if you look at those before pictures, which I encourage, especially Ms. Laparolari or whoever is in charge of the public knowledge, the public getting to know this, let them see these before and after pictures to start generating the sort of support for and enthusiasm for the Department of Public Works. Go on a local radio station, WBOK, for example. Go on television. They're always looking for something to discuss in the mornings, and they'll show the pictures. But let's get the word out to the public that this work is being done. I do a pretty good job of that. I'm going to have these in my newsletter. I do a good job with code enforcement, showing people the demolitions. But I think that the authors, you all, should go out of your way to let the public know, and then maybe we can come back to the public and ask for additional support. That's all.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Okay.
Councilmember King, any questions? On the grass cutting issue, a lot of the issue with the grass is not the cutting, but the aesthetics. And in some cases, and first of all, I want to thank you guys, your agency as well as Mr. Nelson in communication. I take a lot of pictures while I'm riding around on my bike. Live next to especially the Morrison Canal, and they had a tendency for cutting it, leaving certain parts of it uncut. The grass and trash would build up on top of it. So talk to me about, and one of the questions I had was that they would cut the grass, they would leave the edges, and then come back and cut the edges. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if there's a system for how they cut grass, because, the trim work usually helps in terms of how it looks a lot better than the kind of the meat of the grass of the part. When you trim the part next to the concrete and next to the street, that'll go, if they did that first, it would look better than cutting the middle out and having those areas next to our homes still be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 inches. Do we consider how they cut and how they clean up as part of the grass cutting contract?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Okay.
And so good news for you is we're going to push that to the contractor, and and my manager will be on top of them on
Good.
that. As far as our in-house crews go, there's a lot of factors at play. As good as he is, we do have a lot of people that don't show up in the mornings, and so that pushes back other things, and so it messes. That's why it's a really good thing for us to push Morrison to the contractor, where we can really manage that, I think, a little.
Yeah, I just want you guys to be mindful, and you have. I've seen an improvement. That, you know, the folk in New Orleans East and Gentilly and in Algiers, you know, whether it's perception or reality, they want to know that their neighborhoods are just as manicured as maybe the wealthier or what we consider the more financially privileged parts of our community. They want the same level of pride in the work done there that you would do around City Park or some of the more exclusive areas.
It's our goal to make them all look the same, and we'll work towards that. And Morrison is really, you know, the toughest canal. It's the one I get the most complaints on, and it's tough when it rains for Morrison, because we actually 2 years ago, one of my larger tractors went over on its side on Morrison. I lost a zero turn this past year in Morrison,
Yeah.
you know, due to the slope, and it slid into the. So we really, you have to be careful when you cut and how you cut, and that messes up the schedule sometimes also.
Well, just be mindful, and I took pictures of the last hurricane when the rainfall. Morrison was to the edge, and so our street had water in the street. It got up to the sidewalk. It didn't get into the yards or the homes, but if there's 2 feet of dredging, that's 2 feet more water that wouldn't have gotten into the street. It would have been in the canal. So
as our triage approach right now, as we look at the really bad areas that need dredging, eventually what I'd like to get to is to run some soundings and
Right.
see what the buildup is, and then, you know, have those canals dredged to their design depth.
okay.
I would really like to be there in the future.
Well, this is a step in the right direction, Mr. Laparoli. Your agency has been responsive. We've seen some noticeable improvement, and we just want aesthetically, I mean, cutting the grass is fine, but when you have that larger strip, I think when Morrison's 93 acres, right?
Yes.
That larger strip, how it looks and how it's manicured says a lot in terms of the value of our neighborhoods and where we live.
And I've been out there many times.
Yeah,
And,
yeah. Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good?
One other thing.
Councilmember Green.
I just wanted to encourage you to let us know how because you said if you had more funding,
Yes, sir.
let us know how we can work with you to potentially get more support from the state of Louisiana. The Sewage and Water Board and even some of this canal system was created because we all recognize the need to respond to flood events, hurricanes, and that's why the state got involved with creating an entity called the Sewage and Water Board. I think that many times we don't ask of them as we should, and I want to encourage you to recognize that, you know, we'll support any request and any lobbying that needs to be done to get more money out of the state to support especially this kind of activity, because this is not just regular flooding activity. This is hurricane related. You know, you have to have these canals to get the water out when we're going to have these very serious flows. That's why the federal government is spending so much money, for example, on the Sealer project. I just want to encourage you to use us, and let's work together to get more money out of the state. The governor created a task force, and one of the things was there needs to be more support, to be very honest with you. So I just want to encourage you to use us as we can to lobby for more money, and maybe even for some very specific needs of the city.
Okay. And I'll follow up with Mr. Nelson on this. I'm sure he's watching. He'll
Yes.
see this, and we can talk about that. And also probably Ghassan. Let me say there was a recent grant program. It's the Lake Pontchartrain Basin Restoration Program. And I think you saw where I had the St. Charles, the South Galvez Canal.
Yes.
I had put that in there for the grant. It didn't make it, but we still have one project that might make it. It's in the final rounds, and that's the removal of the hyacinths in Bayou Michoud. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, look,
I'll send y'all an update when I find out.
look, we appreciate it. I know Councilmember King, Green, and myself, we do. You know, as a legislative, you know, I think sometimes folk forget we're the legislative branch of government. Our authority is really defined in the charter. We may step out into administrative stuff at some time, but that's not really the charter role of the council. But it is our job to hold you guys accountable, and you guys have been extremely responsive as well as offer solutions. So I know a lot of my conversations, Councilmember Green, about how they cut and where they cut and when they cut have actually, Ms. Laparoli, the agency has listened, and we've seen a direct response to what we get from the community and what we get from our neighbors. So thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
There's nothing wrong with constructive conversations. I think, let the record reflect, we now have a quorum. Councilmember King is here.
Yes.
And can I move approval of the minutes from the June 10th meeting? So moved by me.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Green. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. The minutes for the June 10th are approved. Thank you. You can, next part, the lead program.
Yes.
And if you could identify yourself again when you...
Yeah, sure. I'm Felicia Bergeron. I'm the program manager of the lead line replacement program. So thanks for having me here today to talk about it. So this first slide, I just want to say that, I know we're all aware that lead can cause serious health problems, especially for infants, young children, and pregnant women. There are many sources of lead, including lead paint, but we are focusing today on, lead pipes and drinking water. So as understanding grew about the serious health effects of exposures to lead, regulations were adopted, and in 1986, the Federal Safe Drinking Water Act was amended to ban the use of lead in plumbing fixtures for human consumption. So as you can see here, lead can also be seen in many fixtures in the home, but today we're just talking about the service lines going from the main into the home. So because we knew as an agency that lead can enter the water supply from lead pipes and fixtures, we have historically been taking steps to protect the community. We use a process called corrosion control to minimize the tendency for lead to dissolve into water from pipes, lead solder, and plumbing fixtures. We also test our water. Testing is a critical element, and it allows us to ensure that compliance with federal and state mandates and inform our community of areas of concerns if they're identified. School notifications also go out, and they're notified if lead service lines are found, and we coordinate the replacement of that line with them. We also provide information about lead through informational materials such as our consumer confidence report, door hangers, and our website. Next one. So how does lead actually get into drinking water? So there's no detectable lead in the water that leaves our treatment plants. However, in many water systems across the country, including New Orleans, the service line that connects the distribution system to the home could be lead. So these lines are both on the utility-owned portion of the system and also on the customer-owned private side of the system. So as you can see in this figure here, there's the public space, which is typically the Sewage and Water Board's responsibility, that goes from the main in the middle of the street to the water meter. And then there's also the private owner responsibility, typically, that goes from the water meter into the point of entry into the home. So when I talk about the two different sides of the service line, that's what
And when you mean responsibility for replacement?
Yes.
Upkeep?
And upkeep.
Right,
Yes.
okay.
Yes. So the Sewage and Water Board recently published our lead service line inventory through an interactive online map that can be found on our lead awareness page. The service lines shown on the map could be made of non-lead, such as copper or plastic, galvanized steel, lead, or they could be classified as unknown. So per regulations, an unknown service line has to be treated as lead. An unknown meaning that we don't have any records to show the material type at this time.
So if you don't know what it is, you assume that it's a lead?
Right.
Okay.
You assume that it's lead and you treat it as lead.
Okay.
So here you can see a screenshot of the interactive online map that is on our lead awareness page. So customers can now search their address within the map and see their service line materials. Frequently asked questions and definitions of the service line categories can be found on our lead awareness page. We also partnered with Blue Conduit to help develop this inventory map, and they assisted with predictive modeling that can help predict the likelihood of having lead. So let me take you kind of through the legend quickly and explain what you might see. So if you have an unknown service line, that means, again, that we don't have a record of that service line material. If it says the public side is assumed lead, that means that based on the predictive modeling, there's an 80% chance or higher that your service line contains lead, but it is still an unknown category. So we're not changing material classifications, so it's still treated as unknown. If it says that your public side is assumed non-lead, it means that based on predictive modeling, there is a 20% chance or lower that your service line contains lead. And if it says lead, that means that it has been verified by our records that your service line contains lead. And again, for non-lead, it's been verified that your service line is lead-free. Galvanized mean that it's been verified that your service line is galvanized. And just so that you know, so the service lines that are galvanized also have to be replaced per regulations. So Sewage and Water Board will be notifying customers about unknown lead and galvanized service lines through a mailer such as the one shown here. So the mailers will contain information about service line material, as well as how you can reduce your lead exposure and get more information about our program. Customers should expect to start seeing these notifications in November, so next month. Okay. So now I know we've talked a bit about the EPA regulations, but here's a closer look. So the initial lead and copper rule was finalized in 1991, and then in 2021, EPA revised that regulation, and that's known as the lead and copper rule revisions. So this month, EPA finalized the lead and copper rule improvements. And as we know, the inventory was still required by October of this year per the lead and copper rule revisions, but some other requirements per the new regulation, the lead and copper rule improvements, can be shown here. So these requirements were enhanced and shifted to the right, and with most of them having a compliance or due date of 2027. So some of the ones I wanted to point out is that 100% lead service line replacement is now required within 10 years of that compliance date, which means that all of it has to be completed by 2037.
That's once it's identified as being lead line, right?
Yes, and unknowns. So all of the unknowns
so
have
even
to
though
be,
it's unknown,
all of the unknowns have
right,
to
we
be...
assume that the unknown is lead.
Right, yeah, they all have to be verified.
Okay.
So we have to go out and investigate each unknown and find out that material.
Okay.
And then if it is lead, replace it by 2037. And then also note there's a lower action level, that's a compliance testing level of 10 micrograms per liter, and it used to be 15. So that's all per the new regulations, and they go into effect in 2027. So in response to these regulations, Sewage and Water Board is putting out an RFP to hire a program management firm that will be responsible for designing, managing, construction for the lead service line replacements. They will also manage the inventory updates, mitigation, funding applications, and assist with community engagement. We're also putting out a contract next month to begin service line inspections and replacements at schools and early childhood centers. This contract will also target public service line replacements in disadvantaged areas in our city. So we want to begin right away, even before we have a program management firm in place, even before it's required by regulations, and this contract is going to help us do that.
So let me ask you a question. I think I was on the board when we had the consent decree for the sewer system, or when it was finalized. But that had to be done because there was some penalty for not coming into compliance. Is this similar to that if we don't do it by then, or is that just up to us when you talk about drinkable, safe water source?
You're talking about the deadlines?
Yes.
Yeah, per EPA.
Intended penalties.
Yeah, there could be penalties. There aren't penalties at this time, like written into the regulations. But right now it does have a deadline of 2037. Again, all of this will be dependent on funding, which we're about to talk about, because it's an expensive program, and we're applying for all the funding that we have, but it's not fully funded.
I do know that we're in line for some funding, and there's some discussion about, especially with the chart, council members, as you showed earlier, that the citizen is responsible for that part of the line that goes to their house. But you guys are also looking at how maybe we can use some of those federal funds to actually pay for the citizen or homeowner replacement.
Yes.
So there's a hopes that we'll have a pot of funds to help people with line replacement, correct?
Yes, yes. It is our intention to, as soon as we receive funding, to start replacing on the public side and the private side.
And the private side, okay.
Yes. All right. So rather than wait on funding and regulations, we have been proactively taking mitigation measures. Communication about mitigations has begun with proactive steps that citizens can take now to protect themselves through information on our website, the Consumer Confidence Report, and our door hangers. We've also set up a pilot program for pitcher distribution. So filters, water pitcher filters that are NSF 53 filter for lead. So we've set up a pilot program where customers can request a pitcher filter and pick it up from us. We're also, a part of our mitigation measures, making sure that customers know that that's a good way to protect themselves and mitigate their risks is by using a NSF 53 rated water filter pitcher. So customers can request a filter pitcher through our lead awareness page right now. So lastly, I know we touched on funding, but I wanted to say that this is funding that we've already secured and then also future applications. So we're closing on $86 million worth of SRF loans administered through LDH this month. So this is that funding you were talking about where we have plans to replace on both the public and the private lead service line. So per this funding, it is a requirement that the end state of the service line has to be lead-free in order to use the funding. So, but it's also our intention to replace on both sides. And that's also a part of the LCRI regulation as well, that they encourage a full replacement. We're also applying for $66 million of the same funding source. But again, like I said before, more funding than this is going to be required to fund a program of this magnitude. So far, we're the only utility in Louisiana that is actually applying for this funding for replacements, but eventually other utilities will catch up and we'll have to share this funding source. So with our program management firm in place by 2025, we will begin lead service line replacements at an accelerated pace so that we'll be able to make that 2037 deadline.
Thank you. Councilmember Green.
Nope, no questions on this.
Okay.
Oh, it's off. It should be off.
Okay. Councilmember King. Thank you. Ms. Laparola.
Thank you. Do we have time for our backflow prevention?
Yeah, let's do that, absolutely.
Go ahead, introduce yourself. And
Again.
I'll introduce myself again. Good morning, everyone. My name is Nine Hendrickson, and I am the backflow lead for the SWEBNO backflow section. I'm here to give a very, very brief overview of the backflow prevention program and the recent changes that we have implemented in our enforcement procedures. So firstly, let me begin with a very quick recap of the topics of cross-connection control and backflow prevention. Backflow occurs when contaminated water flows backwards into our clean drinking water lines. This usually occurs due to a drop in pressure, but can also happen due to back pressure and from thermal expansion and other sources. When backflow occurs, contaminants can be pulled into the potable water supply through unprotected cross connections. So what are cross connections? Cross connections are physical connections between the potable water supply and an outside source, anything other than our freshly treated SWEBNO water. Backflow incidents causes a public health hazards, and therefore the Louisiana Department of Health and the US EPA are mandating backflow prevention programs for all of our systems. As the water purveyor, Sewage and Water Board is tasked with evaluating our entire water system for potential cross connections and ensure that each cross connection hazard is eliminated or protected against. The protection is accomplished by the installation of backflow prevention assemblies, and these assemblies need to undergo annual testing to ensure that they are properly operational. As the water purveyor, SWEBNO is also tasked with maintaining records of all hazards, backflow prevention assemblies, as well as their annual test reports for those assemblies. It is our duty to ensure that the customer complies with the federal and state regulations to minimize the risk for contamination and maintain public health. So this leads us to the topic of enforcement and out-of-compliance procedures. This was our procedure from July of 2023 until about September of 2024. We would send out 3 letter notices. First notice would be 60 days prior to the assembly due date for their annual testing. The second notice would be 1 day past their due date, and the third notice would be sent out 30 days past their due date, informing the customers that they are now very much out of compliance and that they need to test their backflow assembly. After that, they would get a documented phone call or a site visit where we would address the hazard with the customer and obtain more contact information to eliminate any situations where the customer was not receiving the information from us. We would also provide information on how to achieve compliance, pamphlets, give them approved plumbers list so that they had all the information they needed to achieve compliance. We would also issue warning notices in person 30 days after the
Now,
phone
Ms.
call is set.
Hendrickson, Nene,
9 like the number.
nine like number. Depending on the hazard, this could be a lot more complicated than depending on what the threat is,
Yep.
or what the problem is. So who determines that?
So what we are doing here in New Orleans is we are following the International Plumbing Code and the State Sanitary Code and our own
Okay.
plumbing code, and they have very clear outlines of what's considers a high hazard versus a low
Yeah,
hazard.
and I asked that question, so it's just not just some inspector at the Sewage and Water Board.
No,
saying,
no,
you
no.
know, your backflow is hazardous or potentially hazardous. You need to do this. You're following some national
Yes.
environmental standards.
Yes, so
Okay.
each one of the hazards is categorized according to whether it's a high risk or a low risk and what type of backflow assembly that needs to be protecting it.
Some
based
type
on
of
that.
toxin, carcinogens, or some type of environment.
They're basically divided into either pollutants or contaminants.
Gotcha.
Pollutants would be a fire assembly because you don't necessarily add anything chemically into it, but you still have water that sits there stagnantly. Pollutants doesn't necessarily affect public health,
Right.
but it affects the aesthetics of the water. Meanwhile, contaminants would be if you had antifreeze injection, for
Right.
example, in that fire line. Now you have a chemical in there, and that will affect your public health adversely.
Thank you. Thank you for explaining that.
Yep. At this phase, our main goal was education of our customers. This is still a fairly new program, so we focused on spending time and effort to interact as much as possible with our customers and explain why backflow prevention is important and why the annual testing of their backflow assemblies is so important. Here is a visualization of some of our earlier enforcement efforts. And this is slightly outdated, but it's okay. Sorry. Sorry. So there are approximately nowadays about 6,400 registered assemblies that are currently active in our water systems. These are assemblies that we maintain records for. So we've seen them, we put eyes on them, we have all the information for them. In February of 2024, there were approximately 2,725 assemblies spread out across 1,600 accounts that required enforcement action. That means that they have received 3 notices and no action had been taken. So we started calling our customers, going out visiting them, and issuing warning notices. 49% of those February 2024 delinquent accounts achieved compliance with these previous enforcement procedures. However, as you can see, currently there are still approximately 1,900 assemblies that are out of compliance. And I know, you ask, Nine, how can you say that 49% of our delinquent accounts or assemblies were fixed and got their compliance in gear and still have this high number of non-compliance? Well, the compliance percentage changes from day to day as some of the assemblies are tested and others go past their annual due date. Compliance numbers are very fluid, and that's why effective enforcement procedures are so vital when it comes to achieving compliance. Nonetheless, we are sitting at about 70% overall compliance currently, which is the highest we've had in the history of the program. And I want to take just a second to note some of our higher non-compliance accounts. About 75% of them are commercial accounts, so small and large commercial accounts. But a very small percent is multifamily, and then you have some residential, which are mostly consisting of irrigation systems. Our action plan moving forward would involve a more streamlined enforcement process, which would utilize notices of violation and water service disruptions instead. So I know that this slide says proposed, but we have already started to implement the following procedures for about a month or so as we move forward with it. So this new process involves 2 letter notices instead. 60 days prior to their due date, the customer will receive a reminder, and then they will get another one 30 days prior to the due date. Once an assembly is 5 days past their due date, you will get a documented phone call or a site visit from the backflow department. We will address the hazard and obtain contact information, including emails and phone numbers from our customers to make sure that we can reach them by more means than just mail. We will require the customer to either submit a test report within 10 business days of their due date or provide proof that a test has been scheduled, and they would also need to provide the plumber company so that we can verify this with the plumber. If we have not received anything 15 days past their due date, we will start working on a notice of violation, and the customer will be notified via certified mail of the violation, and they will be given 10 days to comply once that violation has been delivered. So we send everything with certified mail so we can see when somebody has actually gotten the mail delivered. A show cause hearing will be scheduled once your customer is 30 days past due and we have gotten no response from them. So if compliance has not been achieved 10 days past the issuance of notice of violation, we will schedule that pre-show cause hearing and speak with the customer directly, needing them to show up for that. Our water service disruption, I'm going to jump around just a little bit. We have been sending out NOVs since late September, so we have not seen any water service disruptions yet. But if we come to that point, the backflow section enforcement procedure does not yield any compliance, the Sewage and Water Board will move forward towards disrupting the customer's water service. Water disruption will not be enacted without the Sewage and Water Board backflow section and the legal department following due process in contacting and informing the customer of their responsibilities per the Louisiana State Sanitary Code and the International Plumbing Code. The disrupted water service will not resume until the Suevno backflow section is notified by an approved plumber that a test date has been scheduled. We are working on a fine schedule, but it's still being developed currently, so I won't touch too much on that. We will base it on the length of time out of compliance and how many assemblies the customer may have that are out of compliance. There are some of the bigger facilities that might have more than one. They might have a fire system and they might have boilers and chillers, so they might have more than one on site. So we've been sending out NOVs since late September, so here are some of the numbers from this process. As you can see, we're having success with these procedures. That one is not on there either. We have sent out about 108 NOVs, and we have delivered about 31 with the U.S. Postal Office. We've gotten about 16 customers that responded, and out of those 16, 12 of the NOVs have already been resolved. So it's a fairly successful way of doing this. We're having success, and we're hoping that these numbers are going to continue to grow. And that's about it. Are there any questions?
Questions, colleagues? Ms. Laparola, first of all, guys, thank you for your presentation. The one thing that I like is the responsiveness of the agency and the fact that we dealt with solutions. A lot of these questions, I keep a lot of my notes, my staff will tell you. So, I'll keep notes or questions or observances from the meetings prior to the meetings before. And what we dealt with today was actually a lot of solutions where you guys heard the community, you heard us. So from grass cutting, dredging, drainage, backflow, as well as potential environmental issues that we're addressing. Thank you guys. I think, when we hold you guys accountable, it's not because, we're trying to be bad guys up here. And there's a way to do it. There's a way to be respectful, demand accountability, but also get answers. But what I like today is that we got answers to questions that have been asked by council members for quite some time. Ms. Laparola.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Curran, next item on the agenda.
Yeah, would you like to go back to the contracts approval, or do you want to move to?
Whether I'd like to or not, I think we need to, right?
The,
no, did we have any online comments on this topic?
we don't have any online comments.
Okay, thank you.
So item 3 is a contract.
No, one last thing. Any public comments? Ms. Lewis, did you fill out a card? What? Okay. Yeah, let's do that now before we get into approval of these contracts, please. And I apologize for, I thought I saw you fill out a card.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So I'm totally still just learning how all of this works.
Yeah. Give us your name and address.
Oh, sorry. Grace Lewis, 1523 Marigny Street. What I'm here to ask for today is I have a small human. She's 2 and a terror and destroying my house. And she goes to daycare 2 days a week, which is Tuesdays and Thursdays, which is why you see my pretty face in here on Tuesdays and Thursdays, because those are the days that I can come down here and make comments. If not, you see me like running in and then running back out. So my question today actually is for you, Oliver Thomas, as I would love to have a meeting with you to discuss the pedicab CP&Cs we've talked about. I've talked to your office and I have had no luck in that. So I was hoping if I asked
Absolutely.
you directly that maybe we could get that scheduled.
Well, first of all, today shouldn't just be your lucky day, but absolutely. I know many times my staff tries to manage my schedule because we have so many meetings on top of meetings, but I'd be glad to meet with you. You've been a really good observant citizen, and I value your concern. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'd be
Matter
awesome.
of fact, Dominique will meet with you on the side, and we'll make sure we set it up for within the next 2 weeks or before the next meeting.
That would be amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. Ms. Curran.
Item 3 is contracts for approval and execution per Council Rule 57. The first one is amendment to the contract between the city and H&O Investments for lot abatement services to extend the term for an additional year and to increase the total compensation to an estimated amount of $3.8 million.
Any comments or questions on this contract? Councilmember Green.
Yes, Mr. Davis, just for clarity's sake, and also to just highlight some of the positives that are going on, but just for the public's purpose, this is not $3.8 million for 1 year. It's the total value of the contract.
It is total value of the
right?
contract, yes, sir.
And how many years is the contract? Not to put you on the spot, if you don't know.
2 years.
That's hey, that's all right.
Yeah.
You know, I have confidence. Just get back to me, because
Yes,
sometimes
sir.
people ask, and yes, I could go and look it up right now, but you could also send me.
Understood.
You know,
Yes, sir.
I appreciate it. I want to ask you, I want to be repetitive in making a request of you. I know it's hard to cut all of these lots. I'm just asking that we cut enough to allow all of our communities,
Yes, sir.
no matter what the income level is,
Correct.
to be able to walk on the sidewalks.
Yes, sir.
If you go down certain streets like Metropolitan and Piety Street and the like, the kids are walking in the streets. It's not on you. I understand how difficult it is, but I know that H&O, to cut a lot, has to go through a lot, and you all do too. I'm asking that the public thoroughfares, the sidewalks, be accessible.
Absolutely. We will do that, sir.
I appreciate your help.
Yes, sir. No worries.
Well, my ask along that line is that, look, the contractors out there, and thank you, Councilmember Green, the contractors out there, they bid on this work. And when they bid on this work, I think you bid on this work because you want it. And, of course, you want to get paid for it. Well, take some pride in what you do, right, and give us the best possible product. And what I want to see, Councilmember Green, is a rating schedule at some point for contractors. The ones who live up to the standard of the departments or agencies that they contract with.
Yes, sir.
And then the ones who don't. We may not be able to legally stop you from bidding, and I know Councilman King is one of our great lawyers, but we can at least be mindful of who does the job the right way,
Yes,
and those who do a bullcrap job just because they want a municipal contract. And the other thing I'll add to what Councilmember Green has said, and you and I have talked about it before, I would really like to see you guys get together with the district council members to talk about how we support each other and kind of consolidate our efforts in the community, knowing that when you finish with a certain area that Councilmember King wants done, you're going to get to my district and then get to Councilmember Green's district.
Yes, sir.
Because there are some areas that I think, especially given the fact that they're investable or saleable, that if we can show, kind of clear out a lot,
Yes, sir.
clear as much debris, do as much code enforcement,
Yes, sir.
we can actually, Councilmember King, have like maybe a moment where we get everybody together and say, now look at this neighborhood, right? Knowing that I may have to wait a few months because
Yes, sir.
you're concentrating on his area, but that you're going to get to me. So
Yes, sir.
please kind of take the lead in putting that idea together.
Will do, sir.
You know, I know everybody wants the lot next to them or the block next to them or the corner next to them done. But if we can prove that we're going to get to you eventually, I think people would be patient, especially knowing that if we're going to create some investments and improvements in an area.
Yes, sir. I agree.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Councilman Thomas, while I have a chance, I do want to always express to the Department of Code Enforcement my appreciation for the
Awesome.
work that's being done to remove this blight in our
Yes, sir.
city. The most favorable thing that I can say is that in some instances where people have allowed blight or demolition by neglect, they actually have paid a fine so that they can rebuild something on that lot, or they've sold it. So the work that you're doing and your staff is doing is so important in the long run to making our city more desirable. In certain areas, it's clear, like the Desire area, for example, it's clear what's going on and people see it. I even had somebody express to me an interest maybe in looking at a business along Johnny Jackson Boulevard because they can see the grass cut and they can see those lots taken care of.
Yes, sir.
But those houses demolished. Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome,
And
sir.
thank you to the department. They were part of the walkthrough, the Willows yesterday, that we did with the DA and the police department and the CAO's office. Thank you.
Yes, sir, of course.
Councilmember Green, you move.
Second, move. Yes.
Second by Councilmember King. All in favor?
For the contract, yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, so ordered.
And just for Councilmember Green, clarification, this is a 4-year contract.
Force. Okay, thank you.
Sure. The amendment number 4 to the contract between the city and MDL Enterprises for roll-off trucks for special events to extend the term an additional year, and the current aggregate expenditure of this contract as amended is $2.2 million.
Mr. Curry, Mr. Torrey, he's going to roll up and tell us what this is about, please.
Sure. So this is the fourth amendment to the contract between the city and MDL Enterprises to provide roll-off trucks. MDL provides roll-off trucks that support the city during special events, as well as in facilitating illegal dumping and remediation throughout the city. So MDL has been supporting the city since 2022 in supplementing our illegal dumping remediation, has done a great job. So this is the last year of this contract for roll-offs, which we're seeking to extend.
And as always, I'm just hopeful that, and I'm going to continue this theme throughout whatever time I have in politics, that the DBE goals are satisfied when we can. That's important. And that even specifically that we're focusing on the components of the DBE where we need to improve our economic standing among certain communities, especially with the African American community, women-owned contractors, and other ethnic groups. So, and congratulations to you on the citizen survey.
Thank you.
Where trash, I see that brought a smile to, where, you know, hey man, that's a big deal, man.
Yeah, I'm happy for the city and the residents. I think it's been, a journey over the past 2 years, and we're on a good path.
Thank you.
Councilman Thomas, it should have been front page, center, biggest headline out there. Every 2 years that survey is conducted, and every time there's bad news, it's front page. But the good news is, okay, let's move it to another page.
Well, that's why we have WBOK, the Tribune, data, news, and the weekly and stuff to focus on those articles that give credit to the things that other media outlets won't. So thank you. Chair moves. Second by Councilmember King. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, so ordered. It'll go before the full council. Thank you, Mr. Torrey. Ms. Curran, next item.
Yes, this is amendment number 2 to the contract between the city and MDL for skid steers and front-end loaders for special events. The contract's aggregate expenditure to date is $1.9 million.
Same thing.
Similar contract, just for skid steers and front-end loaders, again, supporting illegal dumping and remediation and special events like Mardi Gras for MDL.
Thank you. Councilmember Green moves. I second. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, so ordered. Thank you, Mr. Torrey.
Thank you, Council.
Any online comments? Any other comments on this item? Nothing? Okay, move adoption. Move.
Did you want to consider the
Oh, yeah,
agenda
we
number
do
5?
have number 5.
This is a presentation from Department of Public Works Ground Transportation Bureau on the taxi cab meter study.
Okay.
Sorry, guys, we were moving so good and so fast that we forgot our MVPs.
Right.
When you guys are ready, if you could state who you are and start your presentation, Mr. Hathaway.
Rick Hathaway, DPW Director.
Good morning, Shannon Blanks, Deputy Director, Public Works. All right, council member, in response to your motion on May 2nd, 2024, Department of Public Works had assessed its current taxi cab meter rates to provide recommendations for updates. We focused on comparing New Orleans rates with those of other major cities in Louisiana and the southern region to ensure that fare structures align with local market conditions. We excluded the TNCs, the rideshare networks such as Uber and Lyft, for a number of reasons. One of their significant differences was the dynamic pricing models and their payment methods compared to the fixed and regulated taxi fares. The TNCs operated cashless, requiring passengers to have a mobile app and credit or debit card, which is limiting for certain groups of riders. Some of the key differences in pricing were surge pricing, where taxis offer predictable rates.
Surge pricing?
Yes.
Okay, you're going to explain what surge pricing is.
So during special events, like our Jazz Fest, or anytime there's a lot of people in the city, TNCs are allowed to inflate their rates to meet the conditions, and where taxi cabs...
Kind of like the hotels do.
Yes, sir. Taxi cabs are not allowed to do that. They have fixed pricing. And there's also highly regulated with cameras, and DPW also collects receipts to make sure that there's no overpricing, where TNCs are regulated by the state.
Okay, so will taxi cabs now be able to use surge, or they can't?
They cannot.
They cannot?
No.
Unless state law is changed?
Pardon me?
State law has to be changed, or city charter has to be?
I mean, we can consider surge pricing,
I'm
but
just
it may
asking
not
for a
be
question.
economical if there is Jazz Fest and someone's trying to get to the doctor.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah. We use comparisons with Louisiana regional cities. We did Baton Rouge, Jefferson, Shreveport, and Lafayette. Also, we looked at Houston, Atlanta, Birmingham, and Biloxi. The regional focus provided a more relevant comparison based on the similar regulatory structures. In New Orleans, we found the drop fee was $3.50, and it's competitive with the regional average of $3.23 and slightly lower than the state average of $4.08. The per mile rate is $2.40, and New Orleans is on the higher end, and Louisiana average is $1.73, and the regional average is $2.30. So the short fares in New Orleans aligns with the regional average of $7.05 compared to $7.02. Medium fares in New Orleans, $20, slightly above the regional average of $19. Longer fares of $35.20 is higher than the regional average of $33.70. Additional fees in New Orleans is $1 per passenger. It matches the regional practices, and no after-hours fees is consistent with many of the regional markets, supporting the fair pricing for all travel times. The New Orleans fare structure aligns generally with the state and regional benchmarks. Those slight adjustments can be implemented to reflect local operating costs. But any updates must balance with affordability for passengers with the need for operators to cover the rising costs. Currently, the recommendations are to maintain the current drop fee, maintain the current per mile charge to align with local costs, and retain the absence of an after-hour fee for consistent passenger pricing.
Ms. Hathaway, anything you want to add to this?
No, but that's our report.
But when you talk about for our industry, right, and transportation, where are we when you talk about national standards, compliance, and how we rate? You talked about how we rate regionally in some areas, but what about nationally?
So I believe when we started to take a look at it nationally, it was all over. It just depended on dense urban populations, and we didn't want to get too far into the weeds with cities that didn't align with us.
Okay. Is this report made for the public, and all of our council members, colleagues have it?
Yes, sir. It was read into record, I believe, in July or August, but I'm happy to forward that to you.
Okay. Anything else you guys want to add?
No, sir.
Not on this topic, no.
Okay, Councilmember Green.
These kind of items don't get as much attention as they should, but I just want to thank you all for the work that you do, this survey, for example, but also the fact that you're interested in finding out what's going on in other places. too many people in our city just say, oh, it's all bad in New Orleans and it's all good everywhere else. There's nothing like a study that compares what's happening in other areas to be able to let people know that in New Orleans sometimes we get it right. You know, we have a lot going on in our city. We have a lot more going on than some other cities in Louisiana. Public transportation is going to be used tremendously this coming weekend for this Taylor Swift extravaganza. Who knew? 3 concerts, 55,000 people each?
The Swifty Bowl.
That's right. It's bigger than the Super Bowl. But ground transportation and the regulations that we have in place, I don't ever see people complaining online that I went to New Orleans and I couldn't get to where I wanted to go at a reasonable rate. And I think that that has a lot to do with the fact that in some instances, and you know, somebody might be watching and say, oh, you're overdoing it. No, the bottom line is that I do see a lot of the things that people say in terms of criticism. They're not doing incredible criticism relative to our ground transportation. So the studies that we do, the work that we do is something that is positive. I would say that if I didn't think it was working, it wasn't working. But in some respects, I think that we're as competitive with other entities or other cities as anybody else. So there's a lot to be done. So anybody who's watching, Councilman Green didn't say everything is solved and we don't have anything else to do. But I think that it's important to recognize that in some areas, New Orleans is on par and excels in other areas where other cities don't. So thank you.
Thank you.
A question for you, Mr. Our street lighting program. Where are we with the street lighting? You know, there was some issues with it early on. You guys addressed it. But what I'm seeing now with some of the lights, especially out in New Orleans East, many of them are kind of patchy. They're out. Some of the ones that were lit up are now out. How are we following up in terms of maintenance? Because people were getting used to the improvement. And then what's the status of our street lighting program now? I think it was out for bid. I think we had 3 or 4 respondents. Where are we with that?
So for streetlights, there was a number of things going on. Of course, we made the interstates our priority when I first came on. We had found that there were some improvements made by the state that the city had accepted, and there was manufacturer defect in the light, but we were able to get in touch with the vendor, and they're going to provide us new lights to put up. There were also some locations, I believe that your office has sent me some concerns coming off the 510. We had put those back up, and then they were immediately vandalized and the entire poles taken. Mm-hmm. So we were considering if there's any kind of alternatives that we can meet with the state on changing how we organize the poles, because we don't want to have to continue going out there on repetitive losses.
And what about uniformity? Some of the lights are bright and white. Others have that bluish looking tint. Yeah. Is it important to have consistency or just to have a light?
The bluish tint that you're seeing was part of the defect, manufacturer's defect that we will be replacing.
Okay. And then the other thing is, now that we've illuminated parts of the interstate, Councilmember Green, it actually highlights the fact that lights are out, Lake Willow, Spring Lake,
right.
Mayo, some of those street lights
right.
Are out there. So it makes it, you can actually see the darkness because we haven't replaced those lights in those communities. Are we doing an assessment there? Are we looking at the adjacent neighborhoods to make sure that while the interstate is lit, that the lights are being replaced and repaired in our neighborhoods?
Absolutely. We just completed a daytime assessment. We're working on the costing for that to see what the cost to do all of the replacements throughout the city look like and begin to take in the phased approach. I know that you're also aware there was a motion made to begin a streetlights master plan, so we received those RFIs. We will begin looking at that and probably go out for a contract later on this year or the beginning of next, just depending on what the assessment looks like and then what the master planning effort looks like going forward. There was also some engagement with some grant writers to be able to help our communities get lighting up. So we're looking at leveraging alternative funding options. We also have the streetlight pilot to look at additional automation, some technology, and also some different power. Solar power was one of the things that was coming to mind. So we're going to be putting those out, and I believe there's some happening in your district. I'm happy to send you all those locations as well. We are also had conversations with FQMD, and they realized they also had a need, and they're putting up some funding to take care of the portions in the Vieux Carré, so that will give us some more manpower to move throughout the city.
Well, it's a little more noticeable now, especially when people are out. The good thing about crime going down, lighting up the interstate, the weather, and being really conducive to getting people out, is that people are noticing the fact that, especially with like Lake Willow, Spring Lake, Mayo, area around Crowder, when you go through the neighborhood at night, you're like, oh, wow, this light is on, but there's a light stanchion or pole here. But these are out. So it's a lot more noticeable now. And people are really out enjoying their neighborhoods and their communities. And that lighting, especially at night, you know, is really helpful. Because whenever I ride or walk with my family through those areas, you know, at one point I didn't even really pay attention to it. But now that the area is more illuminated, you can really see the ones that are out.
Yes. And we do encourage people to continue to call 311 to report the outages, but we had the daily assessment. We also do the nighttime assessments to check where lights are out as well.
And the status of the street lights contract?
That contract is in force. All-Star Electric won the contract, and we just financed it for another $4.5 million.
And when did that happen?
I signed the paper earlier last week.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
And Councilman?
We would like to, we made this request in our 2025 budget to increase the number of staff members within the department to manage the streetlight system. So we're hoping that we can begin hiring to fill those roles in 2025.
Councilmember Green.
Councilman, there are so many lights out between the airport and the Orleans Parish line.
Oh, absolutely.
I just wanted to express my editorial today.
You know, I actually, if you remember, Councilmember, I did a video of the fact that from the airport, from the Loyola exit to the Orleans Parish line, that area, there were more lights out in that area than any other place in the city, and that wasn't in Orleans Parish.
Right.
So when the press highlights stuff in Orleans Parish, right? It's kind of crazy, Councilmember. It's like
that's why I'm
there were more lights out in our neighboring parish than in Orleans Parish, but they made it seem like it was Orleans Parish who was doing so bad. But I actually have the videos. I actually sent the videos to the news, but they still highlighted it as a New Orleans problem, not a regional or a neighboring parish problem. Look, the stereotype that our press has against us politically, socially, and it relates to the news, it's there for a reason. It's been around a very, very long time. And I think it's efforts like this, highlighting successes, and being able to talk to the citizens today that are going to help not only change that, but also change their perception.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Hathaway. I have one card from Miss Grace Lewis. Miss Grace, let there be grace.
I didn't realize what we were talking about today, so I ran all the way back down here.
Right.
Feeling pretty good about the fact that I can breathe right now. All right, so quick thing about streetlights, not what I plan on talking about, but at Rampart and Canal, Lakeside, going upriver, you will find a giant pothole that you have to swerve around, and the light itself lasts 10 seconds. So it is causing traffic there regularly because there are the light problem plus the pothole. Not what I came to talk about. I came to talk about my taxi cab, I guess, brothers in arms. It's really difficult to say that the taxi cab rates shouldn't go up, just one, based off of cost of living in the city of New Orleans versus living anywhere else in the state of Louisiana. If you're comparing us to them, are you also comparing how much it costs to live here versus to live anywhere else in the state of Louisiana? The second part of that is how many taxis are even still operating in those small towns? Because Uber has taken over that market. So you may be looking at taxi cab rates, but how many taxi cab drivers are actually making a living there? Because taxis have been killed in a lot of markets, and they are being killed here in New Orleans. As a pedicab driver, I can say that they are being killed. And Ubers skyrocket. Like when you are sitting at Zulu Ball, I do it all the time. I will pull up on my cell phone on my pedicab. How much does it cost to take an Uber from here to Harrah's Casino? You know, from the convention center to the casino. It's $60. because they crazy charge. So I support the taxi cab industry in getting some kind of increase in fares for events because they're definitely taking the hit.
Ms. Lewis, let me address that because that's an important, and I don't know why I forgot. My wife and I and friends, we went to the Maxwell concert, Jasmine Sullivan concert, and we of course, my wife doesn't like to walk in her heels too far, right? So, Councilmember Green, I asked one of the other drivers of how much it would be to take us 2 blocks, $20 per person.
Who? What drivers? What vehicle are you talking about?
It was in one of the
bike taxis?
Yeah. It was $20 per person to go 2 blocks. And he said, I'm not being honest, he said it in a way, it's like, well, take it or leave it. I was like, come on, man, we're going 2 blocks. And I told him the location. Yeah. He said $20 per person. It would have been cheaper in a cab.
Oh, 100%. It goes both ways sometimes because definitely with the $7 per person, if you are charging the city rate, I'm not going to say that all pedicab drivers.
I'm not against anybody's hustle, right?
Yeah. So that's a whole different. That's pedicab rates, and we're talking taxi cabs. But as far as pedicab rates are concerned, and this is part of the reason why I'd like to meet about it, is there are 3 pedicab companies currently operating in New Orleans. They price fix the amount that they charge the pedicab drivers, and then they make them compete against each other for shifts. So if they don't pay whatever rate they're asked, then they don't get more shifts, which means they have a tendency to then charge way outside the scope because the amount that they're supposed to pay makes no sense mathematically when you look at the rates.
Okay.
So like if you are supposed to pay them $150, you'd have to pedal 26 miles loaded to be able to make that rate. It doesn't make sense. So I'm not saying the pedicab fares shouldn't be adjusted at this point because it's so left and right. They're just kind of going on their own thing. Not disagreeing with you.
Thank you.
I just came to talk about taxis. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Lewis. And before you leave, Ms. Hathaway, I'd like a report on catch basins and drain cleaning. Well, we're still not out of the woods for hurricane season, but I think it's important how we clean drains and maintain catch basins on the way out of season. That'll determine how successful we are in season in terms of their availability and the fact that they're clean and repaired. So if you could get me a report, if we could meet about where that is right now. I've been saying this for a long time, right? If we take care of the catch basins and the drains before we get to rainy season or hurricane season, then they'll be more functional and be a more used council member when we're in that season. So I'm looking forward to a report from you. How many? Where are we with that? We need to step that piece up right now.
Okay.
All right?
I'll get back with you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any online comments? Councilmember Green? All right, move to adjourn. Second, the meeting is over. Thank you all very much, guys.
Thank you.
And thank you, Ms. Lewis. Dominique?